Welcome to Level Up. I'm your host Hakim, a performance mindset coach, a global transformation leader, a trusted advisor to athletes and executives alike. With over 20 years working for huge corporations such as Nike, Tommy Hilfiger, and Cisco, he's helped a lot of teams across sports, tech, fashion, and I can talk a lot about titles, but really it tells a small part of the story. So welcome, Leighton. How are you today?
Thank you, mate. I'm great after that intro. That's my head's going to fit out of the door. Thank you. It makes me sound.
I'm super excited for the podcast to have you as a guest because not only your own experience and like CV and where you work, but also I worked with you directly, and it has been a really amazing experience. And I wanted to share out some of your knowledge, some of your experiences, and see how it goes. So I'm gonna start with something that was not planned for. Just a quick question. If you are competing in Olympics, what sport you would go for? And if you're not prepared, it's tomorrow and you're not prepared, so what sport you would choose?
It's a great question, and the thing that popped into my head is probably the hardest sport in the Olympics, which is the decathlon. And
Oh my gosh.
I would be terrible, but the person that popped into my head was this guy, Daley Thompson, right? So when I was a kid, he was like my hero, and I think he won gold in, maybe it was LA or Moscow or something in the 80s before you were born, Hakim. He was a guy, and I just loved him. I loved the way he showed up. He whistled the national anthem when he was on the podium. He was just such a cool dude. And I just massively respect anyone that can get to that elite level at so many sports. And perhaps in a way, it might be a metaphor for my career in a sense that I've done lots of things adequately.
Really nice. I was actually going to ask you like if you would choose an athlete. So that's
Oh,
definitely him.
well, I mean, yeah, Daley was for sure. When I was a kid, he was definitely my hero. Oh man, I don't know. I mean, nowadays, yeah, it's difficult. I work at Nike, right? So I'm like, immediately my mind is
What?
thinking of all of the different Nike athletes, and oh yeah. So I'll tell you something. I did a prompt the other day we use not ChatGPT, but like an AI Copilot. So I did a prompt, which is who would my Nike athlete be based off of the emails that I'd sent and how I communicate with people, and it came out Serena Williams, and I was like, that's wicked.
Oh my god.
In terms of like how I keep the dialogue going, how I'm good in the rallies, how I'm committed, la 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 la. So I'm not well.
Really nice.
Tennis is the Olympics, I suppose, but I guess I was like, yeah, I'll take Serena. She's a legend.
Absolutely. I'm gonna try this out myself.
It's a great prompt, actually. I'll send you the prompt. It's fun. Yeah.
I wanna go a little bit about your background. I know you so well, of course, but let me start with that. Take us back. Where did the journey begin? Because you began in finance, you moved to travel, buy as a buyer, really managing huge travel program, and then moving to eventually to people leadership and coaching. So tell us a little bit about it.
Where to start? I mean, it's been quite an eclectic career. I mean, actually, even before I moved to the Netherlands, and this is something you don't know about me, my first job out of university was I was a will writer. That means I was like working for a bank or a building society, going into people's house, writing their last will and testament, and sort of selling our executive and trustee services. So my first job out of university was so random, and I don't have a legal background. So I think that's the only job that I ever did, which I would consider sales, because I was like
Yeah.
sort of selling our executor and trustee services and saying, hey, we'll take care of everything should the inevitable happen, kind of thing. So that was the first job I ever had, which is completely random. And then I moved to the Netherlands like nearly 25 years ago, and my first job was covering a maternity leave for someone in the Cisco in the finance department. So I was what they called a dispute coordinator. So every time our invoices went out wrong, which was quite a lot back in the day, I was the person that had to figure out what went wrong, how do we fix it, how do I get the credits and rebills, whatever, and get the money in. And then through there, kind of, I became the team leader of that team eventually. I became the manager of Europe for the whole of the account receivables for the whole of Europe. So I kind of led our business process outsourcing strategy. So when we were taking a lot of our, creating a shared service center in India, in Bangalore, in Dalian, in China, and in Warsaw, in Poland, I was like centralizing all of our global operations and putting it into those into those different shared service centers. So I kind of like really, I think my career really initially took off through the lens of invoice to cash or through the lens of finance. And from there, I was like, oh, what's next? And that's when I kind of pivoted into travel, which is kind of what kind of led me, what was
Sort of
kind of
connected, yeah.
where our paths crossed. They really wanted a new travel manager with a metrics sort of driven approach and a numbers background. And I was like, well, that sounds
There
like
you
me.
go.
So I came into Cisco's travel team and took over the European travel the operations team, like working with our TMC, and then through that journey as well, starting to think about okay, our hotel contracts, who we partner with, airline contracts, our technology, how do we improve our booking
Yeah.
tool and our adoption and travel technology. So I did a bunch of stuff in the travel space at Cisco, which then led me to after I think I was at Cisco from I don't even know, man. Check my LinkedIn, 15 years. A long time. I credit Cisco is where I grew up. It taught me so much. And sometimes you don't know how good a company is until you leave that company.
Yeah.
And I hold Cisco in such high regard. Honestly, I recommend it to anybody. It's a great place to learn, to grow, to meet great people,
Nice.
and for me to travel. And it was amazing. I was in my 20s right when I joined, and mid to late 30s when I left, or something like that. I went to PVH, or better known, I guess, to most people as Tommy Hilfiger, Calvin Klein, and they reached out to me to set up their travel and relocation program. So they had travel and they kind of had relocation, but it was all very email based. It was all very manual. It really needed. There was no sort of strategic thinking behind it. So I was like, travel and relocation, that those things go together. So I had to learn relocation, but that was cool. That was a nice kind of learning. So of
Definitely.
course, I could take my travel learning from Cisco and apply a lot of that at PVH, although it was a very different program. But relocation was also something I just had to learn. And we were bringing, I think at the time, about 15 people into Amsterdam every single month on a permanent relocation. So we really
Wow.
had to figure out, how do we wrap our arms around these people? How do we make sure that their landing is good? How do we make sure that their kids are taken care of, or schooling,
Yeah.
BSN numbers, banking? There's a lot,
Huge
actually,
responsibility. Yeah.
huge responsibility. And that was wicked. So I digitized and transformed and created the policies, built partnerships with the likes of you and different kind of hoteliers and airlines at PVH. And then that led me into doing sort of, and I don't know how this happened. Well, yeah, I ended up taking care of HR for HR operations services at PVH. So that was also including all of the contracting stuff, a lot of,
Wow. That's,
yeah, it was crazy. I had payroll, which was the scariest thing in the
oh my
world
God. No.
to me. So yeah, all of the contracting piece, all of the Workday, ServiceNow, again, looking to how we could digitize certain stuff, how we could implement self-service, and how we could really, with that hospitality mindset, actually, how we could treat
Yeah.
our employees more like you would treat our guests in a hotel. Actually,
Absolutely.
we really give them the things that they can do themselves, let them do themselves, and the things that really need that hospitality touch, if you like, implement the service desk, really try to take care of our employees when we need them. And then and then and then COVID happened, and I think COVID was a moment that kind of like yeah, hit everyone. So that was a good moment for me to sort of reflect. And I think my career had always been jumping on someone else's train, if you like. So it was like, oh, there's an opportunity over there, I'll go after it. Oh, there's an opportunity
Yeah.
over there. And it'd been great. I'd been very opportunistic, I guess, in like taking opportunities when they came my way. I think the thread that ran through my career was always transformation. How do I transform something? How do I build the team? How do I automate? How do I structure it, et cetera, et cetera? But then it was time to just pause, and I was like, well, what would you do if you didn't have to make money? Now, unfortunately, I wasn't in a position where I didn't have to make money ever again, but I had a little bit of bandwidth. And that's when it went all the way back to my origin story, really, which my bachelor's was in sports science. My first love was sport. So hence your first question,
Nice.
Daley Thompson, popped into my head.
Yeah.
I always loved sport. It's been my thing. So I did my bachelor's like way back when in sports science, and back then sports psychology didn't really exist. You went to see a
This.
psychologist, there was something wrong with you. And I think in the 25 or so years between me doing my bachelor's and doing my master's, so I went back to university and did my master's in sports psychology, I think the whole lens around sports psychology changed. I think COVID as well was a really good catalyst for people starting to talk about their mental health. So I was like, oh, this is probably a good
Absolutely.
moment. a good moment for me to learn more about psychology through the lens of sport, to get some qualifications in this and really think about how I can help athletes, help teams, help leaders, help coaches, help anyone actually try to develop their performance mindset and fulfill their potential.
Wow, man, this is really inspiring. I love the fact, and this is for everyone, of course, to learn, including myself, that you had a challenge, then you took a moment to look at what do we have and how can move forward, and you used your own strengths and going back to actually your passion, and which is something I think in the world today a lot of people don't really do. It's like, oh yeah, I need to just work for the job, doing this, getting this income, but we kind of miss the passion, which your story is truly inspiring. And also having this um, bold transition in your mind to start your own thing in a COVID time. It's also really require, of course, you kind of sort of forced to, but also you could also go to the easy way and find a job because you have such a great experience and background. So I'm really inspired that you took this decision. Yeah.
Even through that decision, I also got an opportunity, right? So whilst I was doing my masters, through the girl that or woman that recruited me at Nike, she said to me, she reached out to me. She was working for an agency here in Amsterdam. Said, "Hey, do you want to come and do some sourcing, like recruitment sourcing?" I was like, "Yeah, actually,
Nice.
I just need a few hours, right?" I was doing my masters, didn't need much. And
Yeah.
I went into the office and started doing some sourcing for 2 weeks. And then I met the founder of the company, and she was like, "Why are you doing sourcing?" I said, "She's like, you can do no, you need to do more." I was like, "I don't want to do more. I'm okay with this." Anyway, I mean, I'm exaggerating slightly, but she pretty much locked me in a room for 2 hours until I agreed to take over the Nike account as the account. So I was like, okay, I can do it for a couple of days a week, pair it with pair it with my master. So I was freelancing for her, helping her and the company find freelancers and placing them at Nike, and at the same time doing my masters. And that ended up being kind of my way into Nike as well, which is what I spend most of my time now doing. Is really
Nice.
helping them in the recruitment and attraction of their next generation talent, and then helping them with the whole intern program around all of the programming activities we do. It's an amazing program actually Nike have, and then helping coach those new and dynamic and brilliant people through their intern journey with a view to trying to bring some of them into the organization.
Of course, you had those fears, stepping out into this world, going out from the corporate, stepping out into your own world. How did you overcome those fears? And especially your performance mindset. So, what kind of things you use to control your mind because it's all in the mind?
I don't know that you ever fully overcome fear, or maybe, I think it's acknowledging that it's there, understanding why it's there, and then choosing maybe sometimes courage over confidence. So, for example, I'm not always, the first time I worked with a Premier League footballer, I was not confident in that conversation at all, but I had to be courageous in the way that I approached that, right? In terms of like, okay, well, I think I've got certain things, la 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 la. So I think the sort of we always have that voice in our head, right, that tells us, you're that, you're not that, you're this, that. So one of the things I often tell people is like name it to tame it, actually. So like give it a name, all right, and then invite it for coffee, listen to it, but you don't have to, well, listen to it, hear it, but you don't have to listen to it, right? So it's like, okay,
Mm.
acknowledging that it's here rather than fighting it. Okay, this there, I have this doubt, I have this fear, but it's okay. I'm still going to choose, because it's always a choice, right? I'm still going to choose
Yes.
bravery. I'm going to choose courage. I'm going to choose to lean in. All right. I'm going to be bothered. These are always the things that I try to sort of preach and practice as best I can.
It's not easy to make it. So yeah, you always have those, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. But on the actual work, it really requires exactly what you said: this courage, this mindset, this jumping in and see what can happen in the future. Because you also started something and it led you to another opportunity, which is amazing to learn as well.
And I think that's a really key learning, right? It's like always, it's good to have a North Star where you want to get to or what you want to accomplish, but really just thinking about what's the first step I can make? How can I build that into sort of something that's habitual? Who can I reach out to? What's the smallest step I can take? Because sometimes it's like, and it's the same for me, right? Transitioning to become a sports psychologist after you've done all these other things, that feels like a million miles away when you start. But it's like, okay, what's the first step? Well, the first step is trying to like enrolling at university. Okay, the next thing is like learning how to write an assignment in APA 7th, whatever the hell that is. And so it continues. And then through that learning, you go, oh, okay, oh, I'm learning about motivational interviewing. What's that? I should go and do more about that. Oh, I'm learning about rational emotive behavioral therapy. What's that? I should learn about that. So through the learning, you get new things, and I think that you start to build a toolbox of techniques and approaches, and you build on other people's wonderful work, and then you start to grow that confidence because you've been courageous.
Wow, this is amazing. So really like invest in yourself. It's like
100%.
do the work, do the job, you know? I want to go back to corporate buyer
Yeah.
transition time in your life, you know? And I'm excited for that because I definitely want to learn. I want to ask you, you heard hundreds of sales pitches, like including myself. You heard so many from so many hoteliers. What separates those that work from those that actually just fall flat?
I honestly, this is my opinion. First of all, don't pitch. Listen.
Good advice. Good advice.
I, I I don't want somebody to pitch me something without first understanding, you know, well, not who
What
I
do you
am,
need?
who my
Yeah.
company is. So, what is it that your pitch is trying to solve? So you don't know that until you listen, right? So you might
Wow.
have the most beautiful high-end luxury property in the center of Amsterdam and think, I need to pitch in this. But actually, what I need is something that is close to my office, that meets a certain price point, that, do you know what I mean? That caters to, I don't know, a Gen Z traveler that's digital. So your product might not meet my need at all. So before
Yeah.
you pitch me anything, figure out what I need, right? So I think that as a travel buyer, I always had three P's that I was thinking about, right? And if you could hit all three, brilliant. But it really depended on where I was and what kind of travel I was thinking of. So we had the price point, right? So quite often you might have, let's say you've got the road warrior, the traveler that's on the road all the time, just needs an overnight stay because he's at this kind of. So he's got probably quite a tight budget because he's constantly going. So price is going to be a thing to him. The next thing is going to often be proximity. So proximity to key locations, whether that's customer, but more often than not our own location. So whether that was at Cisco, whether that was at PVH, it's like, okay, how close are you to the office? Because again, we get people that come in, they just need somewhere that's close to the office. And then the next P is like product. So some travelers are different, right? So they might be coming, let's say they're coming from the US to Amsterdam for a week, right? They might want to be in the city center. So the proximity is not as important. And hey, you know what? We're going to spend a bit more on price. So then it's about the product and the experience. It's like, okay, I want the hotel where I'm going to get the additional service, or I might get the upgrade, or maybe I'm a digital savvy traveler. I want to do everything on my own, or maybe, I don't know. There's all these different things that different travelers want. And I think when I think about myself as a traveler as well, like when I used to go to New York for PVH, it was always really funny actually, because the travel manager in the US used to think, why are you staying in public? And public was nowhere near the office, but I absolutely loved the product, loved it. And I just was like, it's such a cool experience. And it catered, and I was going to New York for a week. So I was like, yeah, I want to be there, and I'll be on the rooftop and have drinks after dinner, see the New York
Yeah.
skyline, do all this stuff. Because my time out of the office was more important to me than proximity to the office. But you get different
Absolutely.
people, like again with PVH, we had the Moxie right next door. That was a brilliant proximity product and a brilliant price product, but
Remember, yeah.
the product is not for everyone, right? So I think before you pitch in anything, really ask questions, figure it out, understand the person in front of you, understand their needs, understand what's important to them, and to the different types of travelers that they have.
I think I can relate to that definitely because when we met, I remember in the beginning I was in W Amsterdam, and that time, of course, the office was quite far
Yeah,
from.
yeah, I remember. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. And I think what really helped me is absolutely learning from you, listening to you. And I remember you always told me, let's just, wait, the opportunity will come. And in fact, I agree, you might have amazing luxury product and services, but if you don't really know what the company or the buyer needs, then your pitch is just going somewhere else.
yeah. I think that the interesting about the W, for example, is like that one would, like if I put my Cisco hat back on again, right, that's going to appeal to a lot of my Cisco travelers because it's
Yes, yes,
part of Marriott. It is part of Marriott, isn't it? I'm
yes,
still
yes,
right.
yes,
A
definitely.
while I've
Yeah.
been out of the game. So you get your loyalty points, you get your upgrades, you get all the things that you get through your Bonvoy. So that really would appeal to a probably a certain demographic of Cisco traveler. PVH traveler, they prefer Soho House, they prefer Hoxton.
Yes,
And
yes,
that's
yes. It depends. It depends
fashion
really.
people. Do you know what I mean? So you've got different. I mean,
Absolutely,
it's always horses for courses, right? So you really different companies value different things, different employees value different things. But I think
absolutely,
thinking through the lens of those three P's is a good kind of a good setup.
absolutely. Move the buyer hat now. The financial. If you would pick up a brand, like something you really like, enjoy, relate to, which brand would be hotel wise?
For hotel, I mean, I think I'm just mentioned the public in New York. That always, I don't know. I love that place actually. I don't know why. There was
Nice.
something about the atmosphere. It felt like, well, there's two places that spring to mind: the public in New York, and then Zoku, which is now everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but it was originally here, and that's I
Yeah.
introduced that to the travel program at PVH, mostly for the relocation actually, because they catered. They had a brilliant
Yeah.
solution
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
because we had so many single and couple travelers relocating, young people, and Zoku was amazing for that because it created that sense of community. They had community dinners. They got to meet with other people that were relocating from, could be from a Nike or an Addy or a Booking or whatever. So it helped. It helped to create that sense of community outside just what the people were doing. So, and I think what I love about Zoku, and I think public similar, although it's a little bit more clubby, I suppose, is it
Yes.
it's that communal space, right? I think there's so many hotels if they've got that like lobby is a waste of space, right? You have like this long walk into this desk at the end, and then you somebody checking you in, and you just like all this stuff, right? You can have a florist in there, you can have a bakery in there, you can stick a pool table
That's
down the
true.
front, you can have like communal living space, live kitchen, all this stuff, right? So and make that space part of the community, and then that attracts people, not just travelers but people that are in the neighborhood. So I know we both know David, this is a big bugbear of his, but like this is a
Yes.
yeah, 100, him and I are completely aligned on this. There's
Yes, I
those
agree. I do agree.
feel part of the community as a traveler but also as a local. That's the kind of stuff
I fully agree with you. Being in that sector for over 15 years now, I can definitely relate to this. And it's the travel is changing, so it's not anymore that people just want to go to that traditional with a lot of points and really luxury and really nice rooms. They always want to connect to the local part. They want to have the experience. They want to have the community, which
yeah.
absolutely Zilko and a lot of other brands are coming now to kind of do the same thing, because you also want to build a loyal client. You don't want somebody to just stay with you one time and leave. You want them to come back again. Or search where you are. If you travel to New York, you look to where it's, oh, like I want to
Yeah.
go there. I want to find it. So absolutely.
Yeah, you want someone to come on a podcast and sing about how great they love the public, for
Yeah,
example.
exactly. Exactly.
I
Exactly.
haven't been there for years, but I still have the robe. So I mean, I'm not big on like getting given gifts, but they gave me a robe, and it's like my favorite thing.
Nice. Here we go. It's the promotion.
There you go, public. Free night, welcome. Yeah.
Really nice. Do you miss the corporate travel world as a buyer?
It's a good question, actually. I think when I was like leaving it, no, because it had turned into all about PCR tests, different restrictions for different countries,
Yeah.
and that moment in time was like,
Painful.
oh, that was a really tough time to be in travel. But now I now have had some time and some distance. Yeah, I do. I definitely miss certain parts of it. I think the great thing about the hospitality industry is it's hospitable. So you meet really people focused people, and I think they're my tribe actually.
Agree.
People that really care about taking care of other people. I realize that in my other work and a lot of what I'm doing at Nike, what gives me the most joy is taking care of people, helping people on their journey. So I think hospitality people are my tribe, I think. So I do miss them. Yeah.
Nice to hear. Well, I'm here. Everyone is here. But really, I can fully agree with you on that. I always believed actually that I'm not a salesperson. Yes, I worked in sales, I worked in business development, and I had those titles. But I always believed or looked at myself as someone who's building relationships, and I always believe that always the relationship is your kind of secret ingredient that will help you along the way. I think having this conversation now also is a blessing. It's also that relationship that we were able to build together, and I'm really thankful for it. But yes, it's something that is a must. It has to be there. What do you think about that in terms of hospitality, but not only for hotel sales, but also for buyers? What do you think about relationship in general, building relationships?
Look, I think it's everything. Like, for example, you reached out to me about this podcast a few weeks ago. I don't think we've done business together for like, I don't know,
Not
six,
really.
7 years,
Yeah, more.
maybe more,
Yes,
right? But you've stayed on my radar. I've stayed on your radar. We still kind of, checking on what we're doing on LinkedIn or
exactly.
whatever.
Yeah,
And that comes from the relationship, right? And the relationship we fostered was less about the product you were trying to sell me. It was more about you getting on your skateboard to kind of skate. The conversations we have
yes,
about football, about your son, or about these kinds of things, right? So
exactly.
those are the things I remember. I don't necessarily remember, I don't know, what your revenue per
Offer
available,
or the price or whatever.
whatever. So I think that the way that I see like these relationships is it's about the human first, right? It's about where can we connect, right? Where are our differences that are interesting to explore, and where are our similarities that are interesting to explore? And then the sales or the commercial relationship, think of that as the garnish, right? We sprinkle that on top. And because the main course is how we interact as humans, and that's the
Correct.
stuff, that's the magic, right? That's why we're still talking all these years later. It's
I
not
agree.
about, yeah, it's not about the W
That
or
human connection, yes, definitely.
yeah.
And I'm thankful for it. Thank you for also being, super supportive along the way. Even I remember back in when you were PVH and we were still trying. I was pushing for W to work with W, but of course, I was still in the beginning of my career, and I learned a lot from you. So really, thank you for that. And I want to transition a little bit to since we're talking about maybe relationship and coaching. Coming back to you, what you do now as a talent acquisition at Nike and coaching high performers. You're now working with one of the corporate leaders of the world and most recognizable brands actually on planet. So, what makes someone CV or resume stand out in today hiring landscape?
Oh, it's a good question. And I think it's a little bit of to a degree, I'm going to answer on behalf of me because I think every recruiter has a slightly different
Of course,
approach to what they're looking for. But when I think about so the first thing about a CV, often you see CVs where they think that they need to tell you everything they've ever done. Please don't do that, right? I have a question for you, Hakim. How long do you think a recruiter spends looking at a CV?
I think being myself in a hiring role for several years, I don't know. It just again that's me, but it would be 3 to 5 minutes. If something didn't really hit me up, I would definitely because the first impression says a lot. Like when you look at CV, the way it's written, the way. But I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you.
Oh, but okay, so as a hiring manager, I would agree you spend more time, right? But as a recruiter, like for example, I'll give you just to put it in context. We had about 50, let's say, just say for the sake of argument, 50 internships last year at Nike. We had over 5,000 applicants, right?
Oh my god.
Yeah. So we can't spend 3 to 5 minutes on every CV. It's just not
No.
feasible. So we're spending like you got to capture my attention in let's say 10 seconds, roughly, right? So I think what I would say to people is you really well. Here's a little acronym that I use when I'm asking people or getting people to think about their CV. It's like make it epic, right? E is for the employer. So what is the target audience for this CV? What is the employer looking for? And then really bring to the top who you are, what do you offer, who do you do it with for, and what are you seeking? So I love a little profile segment at the top that kind of gives me a snapshot of who Hakim is, what he's done, who he's doing it with, and what he's looking for, right? As it pertains to the job description. Don't tell me all the things that are not related to the job description, which is kind of the second beat, which is perspectives, right? So that's the employee perspective. What do you think the employer is hoping to see in the CV? What experiences or more importantly, skills that most impress? Edit to amplify, get that stuff to the top, make it stand out, make it pop, right? Think about your CV as a marketing tool, especially at a company like Nike. How well you market yourself talks to me about how well you're going to fulfill any position at Nike because we're a marketing company, right? As much as anything else. So I think that's
Yeah.
important. The next thing is about impact. So if we reflect on what the skills, I just kind of talked about this. If we think about the skills and experiences, how well are we really drawing that stuff out? How well are we really aligning that with what's on the job description? How are we amplifying the things that we've done or the skills that we have that fit really nicely together with the job description? And then the last thing is C is for changes. So if you're thinking of it through the lens, the epic lens, the C is for changes. And this is where the magic happens. It's in the edit. It's not about telling me everything you've ever done. It's about how do I see the skills that you have that are applicable to this role, might be transferable to this role. Maybe it's the education you've had, depending on where you are in your career. But really make those changes to your CV that make sure that you're baiting the hook, because that's what your CV is, right? You're baiting the hook. So hook me with making it as easy as possible, as clean as possible, as clear as possible for me to understand who you are, what you're looking for, who you do it with, what your key skills are, and how what you do really aligns with what we're looking for.
This is top, like definitely some real advice there. And wow, I learned a lot myself out of this. And it's really interesting that the first, I didn't actually realize that it's a couple of seconds, or because of course, if you have 5,000 people applying, it's absolutely 3 minutes is already a lot.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it depends. Again, this is Nike. We don't have a talent attraction issue, right? People want to
Exactly.
work for the swoosh, so
Exactly.
we obviously get a lot of applicants. So it
Exactly.
might differ for different companies. It might differ for different roles. It might differ, but
It
the
is. It
reality
is.
is, in our world, in the world of the big corporate, where you're an attractive brand, whether that be whoever, Google, Apple, Facebook, Nike, whatever.
Whatever. Yeah,
It
exactly.
is, you're going to get a lot of applicants. So you've really got to understand how you make that pop and how you're baiting that hook, really. Yeah.
Exactly, absolutely. I fully agree. And also, what really triggers me is like how to stand out. How can you make sure that okay, this resume, this first kind of lit sentences will make the recruiter or the hiring manager continue reading. Which is
Yeah.
absolutely the beginning. Thank you for that. As a performance coach, what separates top performer teams or athletes from others? What kind of mindset that they have to build or have to practice to be that, different person?
We're talking about individuals or teams or so.
Let's talk about individuals.
Like I think if we're talking like within a sporting context, let's start with that at least.
Yeah.
I think first of all, and so I've been doing some work with an under 15s football team recently. And first of all, it's like awareness of your brain in terms of thinking of it as a tool, right? So if I think about footballers, right, they often think about the tactical components of the game, the technical components of the game. They might think about their strength, their condition, their nutrition. So first of all, then start thinking about, okay, I have this amazing thing between my ears, which is really helping me or hindering me, right? Depending on how I approach things. So I think what makes people great is one, I would say, try to adopt an approach mindset rather than avoidance mindset. So think about that again within a footballing context,
Interesting.
the penalty shootout. The guy that steps up, he's done his visualization. He's thought, I'm going to stick it top bins. I'm gonna stick it top left. I'm gonna stick it top left. Sticks it top left. Versus the guy that steps up after him thinks, don't miss, don't miss. The minute you start
Yes.
in avoidance, and it's the same with the golfer. Don't put it in the water. Put it in the water. So always trying to think of things through sort of an approach mindset rather than avoidance mindset is really, I think, key for how you kind of approach things. Focus, like how well you can focusing on the right cues, right? Because there's so many distractions, and this is either in sport but also in the world, but there's so many things fighting for our attention. So really getting really sharp on what you need to focus on. So whether that's a tennis player that's really shutting out all that noise and being able to focus on the spin of the ball, the bounce of the ball, whatever, or whether that's this, the sales professional that's really thinking about, okay, how am I going to focus on the right kind of client that's going to like what it is that I'm trying to sell? And then bringing that focus back. So it also, like, I often talk to people around these triggers, right? So we all lose focus quite quickly. We can lose focus. So think about some things you can do to reset focus. So that could be some self-talk. So that could be switch on, for example. I do it with footballers, and I'm just like, maybe they use the color of their boots. Blue is like, keep cool, or red might be fire in the belly or something like that. Little cues like that, or little actions. So again, I work with a footballer and he does a little twist of the shin pad to reset his focus, or tap the forehead, or whatever. So think about these cues that help you go, okay, I need to refocus on what it is that going to make the difference. You probably heard that thing. I think it's Roger Federer that talks about tennis is a great example, actually, because I think although he won 80% of his games, he only won 52% of his points. And I think Djokovic has talked about this as well around is
Yeah.
how quickly you reset your focus to the next point. Forget what's gone, let what's gone go, and you can
Go.
focus on the now, the here, the now, and what
Really nice.
you can control. I think that's the other thing, right? We get so distracted with all these things we can't control. The only
Yeah,
thing you
exactly.
can control is yourself, how you show up, your mindset, what you bring, how you communicate, how you treat other people. Focus on the me, the here, the now.
Man, it's amazing. I'm loving that. I'm loving the conversation. We are slowly moving toward the end of the podcast, but I have a few fire rounds of questions, like really quick answers, something for everyone to learn. If I were to ask you one thing people misunderstand about corporate procurement,
Um,
or salespeople misunderstand.
I think if I think back to my Cisco days when I first started doing procurement activities in Cisco, I always, when I was young, right in my 20s, I always thought it was about winning. Like I had to win that negotiation, and I had a mentor or a manager who was like, "Well, you need to leave something on the table for them as well." So I think like at least my perspective, I'm not saying that every procurement professional thinks the same, and I'm not even consider myself a procurement professional anymore. But I think the misconception or the thing I'd like to think about is it's really about that long-term partnership, how you can both deliver value to each other rather than I win and you lose. And I used to think like that. I used to think, oh, I'm going to scratch every dollar out of Hakim, make sure I get my rate as low as possible. Actually, no. If I can give you something, so you're hitting your targets. At the same time, you're delivering something for me in terms of the value, the price, the product, the proximity, whatever it is, the value adds that you might give. Okay, we can probably forge a partnership that's going to benefit both of us. So going from win-lose to win-win.
Really nice. I wish everybody thinks like you, like that. Life would be much
Wow,
easier.
yeah.
What a book or a habit that changed your life?
Man. Honestly, it's too difficult for me to kind of break down a single book or habit. But I would say the thing that changed my life in the most recent time, it was going back to university and doing the masters, right? So going back into education, right? So I got my bachelor's in 1999. I got my master's in 2023, I think it was, or whatever it was. So there was a little bit of gap between the two. I think what that did was it helped me to think critically again. It helped me to focus again. I think we live in a world now where everything's so fast and we don't really have the time to sit, think, write an assignment. So I had to get back into that slow mindset when I've been in that fast, fast, fast mindset for so long.
Yeah.
And through that process, it introduced me to so many things, right? I did a motivational interviewing course. I did acceptance commitment therapy. I did REBT. Next month, I'm doing Spotlight, which is a psychometric tool, which is fantastic. I'm working towards my ISSP. So all these things that I guess have helped me. It makes it so hard to just pin down a single book because I've read so many recently. It's ridiculous. But I think one, okay, I'll give you one just quickly. Mindset, Carol Dweck pops into my head. I think that's a useful book for anyone.
Nice one. I'm gonna check it out. I didn't read this one before, but definitely I'll check it out. And so it's I think the secret ingredient is about self improvement. It's about really continue to learn. I think this is what is something that I personally try to do, but also really nice to hear it from you. And I think for everyone to learn is really try to invest in yourself, and develop yourself, because a lot of people, if you're not doing it, there's so many other people doing it in the same time.
Yeah, I think as also coming back to one of the previous questions, that continual personal development is key and critical, I think, because, and this is such a cliche thing to say, but it really is the journey. And I think we're so often focused on the outcome. So again, taking it back to sports psychology, I'm always telling people, we can't necessarily control the result. What we can control is our process, how we show up, the things that we do, how quickly we reset, how we talk to ourselves, our technique, our this, that, and the other, our strategy, etc. So again, it's like we're on this journey, and the outcome, well, there's only one outcome, and we're all going to end up there some point. So we may as well enjoy the journey.
Yes, definitely. I agree. And my last question: what is next for Leighton Smith? What is next? What's coming up?
So, I mean, I think I'm doing my Spotlight accreditation in September, and that's a really beautiful psychometric tool that really thinks about thinks about, let's say, viewing and doing. So it talks about your mindset and what your preferences or how you sort of see the world, and then it talks about like your behavioral way in which you tend to approach things. So that's a super lovely psychometric tool, which I'm going to get my qualification in September, which is really going to help me with my coaching. I'm also, I mentioned it, I think before, I'm working towards my International Society of Sports Psychology, or ISSP accreditation.
Well,
A fully fledged sports psychologist and on their register, which is, I'm hoping to try and get that done by the end of the year. And then professionally as well with Nike, we will relaunch our intern program again in sort of September, looking to recruit the next batch of fantastic interns that are going to hopefully join us from February next year. So those are all things that are kind of on my next 6 to 12 month kind of road.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, I know. It's always I tend to fill my plate a little bit too full. Maybe I should take a
Nice.
holiday. Maybe what's next for me, a holiday, maybe at some point.
Absolutely. That's good timing, Leighton, thank you so much for giving this, masterclass. I think sort of advice and experiences. I personally thankful for the partnership, for the relationship over all these years, and also for the really inspiring and very strong actually advice that you give. I'm sure everybody will be able to learn something. And to all the listeners, whatever hospitality, sales, buying, leadership, if you want to connect with Leighton, please go ahead. I'm gonna hit up your inbox if
Great.
you want.
Great.
And
Touch.
absolutely, I will share your details in the link below, like what you do. And really, thank you so much for your time today, and wish you all the best. Let's stay in touch, and yeah, have a really nice weekend ahead of you.
You too, Hakim. Appreciate you reaching out. Appreciate the conversation. It's been great.